Since 2020, orcas off the coast of Spain and Portugal have sunk 7 boats. They have disabled hundreds more, snapping rudders, ramming hulls, and leaving sailors stranded at sea. And in every single one of those recorded incidents, they have not seriously hurt a single person on board. That is the strangest part of this entire story, because these are some of the most powerful predators on the planet. Wild orcas hunt seals, sharks, rays, and even whales far bigger than any human. So why would an animal capable of that much force choose to destroy your boat and completely ignore you? In this video, you'll learn exactly who these whales are, how this bizarre pattern started, the leading theories for why it's happening, and what it reveals about the biggest myth people believe about orcas and humans. Let's start with the whales themselves, because this isn't some random group of ocean predators. This is a small, specific population known as Iberian orcas, closely tied to the waters around Spain and Portugal. Scientists consider them critically endangered, with some counts putting the entire population at around 40 animals, and other recent reports placing it in the high 30s. Let that sink in for a second. Fewer than 50 whales are responsible for one of the most talked about animal behavior stories in the world right now. A group that small also means the stakes here are unusually high, since public fear or a heavy-handed policy response could put real pressure on a population that is already fighting to survive. Their main food source is bluefin tuna, which brings them into the exact same crowded waters used by sailors, fishing boats, and shipping traffic. That overlap matters, because this entire phenomenon is unfolding inside a busy human corridor, not some untouched wilderness far from civilization. Picture the setting for a second. Narrow straits packed with sailboats, fishing vessels, and cargo ships, all sharing space with a tiny, tightly bonded family of whales chasing the exact same fish that fishermen are also chasing. That crowded, high-traffic environment is the actual stage where this whole strange behavior has been unfolding for years. The first strange encounters were noticed back in 2020 near the Strait of Gibraltar. Since then, the behavior hasn't faded away. It has repeated, season after season, for years. Multiple tallies now put the number of recorded interactions above 500 by 2023 and 2024. Exact numbers shift depending on how each report counts an interaction versus a simple sighting, but the trend itself is crystal clear. This is not a one-time fluke. It's a sustained, repeating pattern involving a tiny, endangered group of animals, and it keeps happening. Now let's talk about what these encounters actually look like, because the specifics are what make this story so eerie. The whales tend to target sailing boats rather than massive commercial ships. And within those sailing boats, there's one part they go for again and again: the rudder. Reports describe orcas nudging it, biting it, bending it, and in some cases snapping it clean off, sometimes appearing to coordinate with each other while doing it. Some boats have been disabled so badly they needed to be towed back to shore, leaving sailors drifting helplessly in busy shipping lanes until help could reach them. By 2024, animal welfare and marine policy reports commonly referenced 7 boats that had actually sunk following these encounters. 7 boats sunk by an animal that is famous worldwide for the fact that it almost never seriously injures a human in the wild. That last point deserves its own moment, because most people don't realize how rare confirmed wild orca attacks on humans actually are. The few fatal incidents involving orcas that most people have heard about happened in captivity, in tanks, under extreme stress, and abnormal conditions that don't exist in the open ocean. In the wild, despite orcas being fully capable apex predators with the size, speed, and teeth to seriously hurt a person, there is essentially no solid historical record of that happening. So here we have a population that is choosing to fight boats, disable steering systems, and in some cases sink entire vessels, while the humans standing right there on deck remain physically untouched. That's not the behavior of a predator that sees you as food. It's something else entirely, and scientists are still trying to fully explain it. If these whales genuinely wanted to hunt the people on board, marine biologists agree there would be nothing physically stopping them from doing exactly that. Orcas are fast, strong, coordinated hunters that regularly take down prey many times their own size in the wild. The fact that hundreds of these encounters have happened, involving direct contact with the boat itself, without a single documented case of a person being seriously attacked in the water, is the strongest piece of evidence we have that something other than hunting is driving this whole pattern. Let's go through the leading theories one at a time, because each one adds a different piece to the puzzle. The first theory is trauma. Early on, some scientists floated the idea that a single female, nicknamed White Gladys in media coverage, may have had a bad experience with a boat or fishing gear at some point, and that younger whales then copied a defensive reaction she developed afterward. It's a compelling story, but it remains a theory, not a proven fact. Nobody has documented a single confirmed traumatic event that started all of this. The second theory is play. A workshop in 2024 that brought together orca specialists and regional authorities described the behavior as looking like play from the whale's perspective, even though it is extremely dangerous for the humans involved. This theory fits several details we already know: the repeated focus on rudders specifically, the involvement of younger whales in some sightings, and the fact that orcas are famous for being curious, playful, and endlessly interested in manipulating objects they encounter. The third theory is social learning combined with a passing fad. Orcas live in tight matriarchal groups and are known to pass down hunting techniques and habits culturally, almost like traditions within a family. If just one or two whales discovered that biting a rudder creates intense resistance, noise, and movement, that discovery could easily spread through the group simply by other whales watching and copying. Other orca populations around the world have shown temporary behavioral trends before that eventually faded on their own, so it's entirely possible this rudder behavior could disappear again in a few years, the same way it appeared. Notice that every single one of these theories, trauma, play, or social fad, points toward curiosity, learned behavior, or emotional reaction, and not one of them points toward hunting humans for food. That distinction is the whole key to this story. It's worth digging a little deeper into why social learning specifically fits this population so well. Orcas live in matrilineal groups, meaning knowledge and habits passed down mainly through the mothers and grandmothers of the group, generation after generation. Different orca populations around the world are known to have their own distinct hunting styles, food preferences, and even communication dialects, almost like regional accents and customs that stay within one family line. Because the Iberian population is so small and so tightly knit, a single discovery by just one or two whales could spread through nearly the entire group in a relatively short amount of time, simply through watching and copying, the same way any strong family habit gets passed down. That's part of why scientists take the fad theory so seriously. If hitting rudders produces an interesting reaction, resistance, noise, sudden movement, and that discovery gets observed by curious juveniles, it could spread rapidly through such a small, close population, then just as easily fade out again once the novelty wears off, the way other short-lived behavioral trends have faded in different orca groups studied elsewhere. Before we zoom in on the rudder, it's worth pausing on why this population's small size makes the whole story even more sensitive. These same waters are packed with fishing boats competing for the same bluefin tuna the orcas depend on to survive. Any shift in prey numbers, fishing intensity, boat traffic, or underwater noise could easily change how often whales and boats end up crossing paths. That doesn't prove boats caused this rudder behavior in the first place, but it does place the whole story firmly inside a busy, human-dominated stretch of ocean, not some untouched wilderness far from people. It also explains why the response from marine authorities has leaned toward coexistence, seasonal warning maps, rapid incident reporting, and non-harmful ways to deter contact, rather than any kind of punishment aimed at the whales themselves. Let's zoom in on the rudder itself, because the choice of target is one of the strongest clues we have. A rudder moves. It resists. It reacts instantly to pressure, which makes it exactly the kind of object a highly intelligent, curious predator might find endlessly interesting to interact with. It's also the steering part of the boat, not the parts humans are standing near, which lines up with the idea of testing or disabling an object rather than trying to eat something. Some experts compare it to the way land predators will test and manipulate unfamiliar moving parts of an object out of pure curiosity. Others see it as closer to pure play, a responsive toy that happens to be attached to a boat carrying frightened sailors. Either way, the pattern is consistent. The target is the mechanism that controls the boat, not the people standing near it, and that consistency across hundreds of separate incidents is hard to explain away as random chance. There's also an important language shift happening among scientists and marine authorities. Many now deliberately avoid the word attack and use interaction instead. That's not just being overly careful with words for no reason. The term attack implies hostile intent aimed at a person, and using it too freely can encourage people to think about retaliation against an endangered species that is already down to just a few dozen animals. The evidence supports repeated, dangerous contact behavior aimed at boats, not deliberate predation aimed at people, and the language scientists use is trying to reflect that distinction accurately. Guidance for sailors in the affected waters has also shifted over time as more data came in. Earlier advice sometimes told sailors to simply stop the boat and wait it out. More recent regional guidance has focused on reducing how long the interaction lasts and moving away safely when it's possible to do so, since different responses seem to shorten or extend how long the whales stay engaged. That shifting advice tells you something important on its own. Humans are dealing with a genuinely new kind of wildlife problem, one where a hyper-intelligent superpredator isn't hunting you, but is absolutely willing to destroy the machine keeping you afloat. There's real disagreement about how to interpret all of this, and it's worth being honest about that instead of pretending the science is fully settled. Some mariners who have lived through these encounters firsthand believe the behavior is clearly aggressive, and it's hard to blame them, given that their boat was just disabled in open water. Some conservationists worry that describing the whales using words like revenge or rebellion makes for a great headline, but badly distorts what's actually happening biologically. Scientists themselves are cautious too, because everything here is based on observation from a distance. Nobody can climb inside a whale's head and confirm its motive with certainty. There's also a real concern about imbalance in how this story gets told. A critically endangered population, down to just a few dozen animals, risks becoming globally famous for a dramatic, fear-inducing behavior instead of being known for how fragile and rare it actually is. That imbalance matters because public fear can end up shaping conservation policy more than the actual science does, especially when a viral story spreads faster than the nuance behind it. Now let's connect this back to the bigger paradox at the heart of orca biology. These are animals with some of the largest brains in the ocean, complex social structures, their own regional vocal dialects, and cooperative hunting strategies passed down through generations. And yet, across all of that raw intelligence and predatory capability, humans simply don't appear to be part of their natural prey category in the wild. Scientists have proposed a few reasons for this. Humans may be unfamiliar as prey, may not be worth the energy or risk involved in catching, or may simply never have been part of the inherited hunting culture passed down through orca generations. None of those reasons alone fully explains it, but together they suggest something bigger. That predation isn't only about physical ability. It's also about tradition, culture, and what an animal has actually learned to hunt. Even the specific advice given to sailors reflects this same uncertainty, since managing an animal that isn't hunting you, but is still capable of sinking your boat, is a genuinely new kind of problem for wildlife safety officials to solve. There's no simple playbook borrowed from shark attacks or bear encounters that fully applies here, because the underlying motive doesn't match either of those more familiar predator situations. That's exactly what makes the Iberian orca story so powerful. These whales are proving, in real time, that they are neither harmless ocean mascots nor mindless killing machines. They're something far more interesting, selective, curious, and behaviorally complex enough to destroy a machine without ever converting that aggression into an attack on the person standing on top of it. There's one more layer worth sitting with before we wrap up, and it's about how differently we experience power in these encounters. Humans build boats specifically to feel safe on the water, to feel protected from the ocean itself. These encounters completely flip that assumption on its head. Suddenly, the boat becomes the vulnerable part, while the people on board stay physically safe but completely exposed emotionally, watching a wild, intelligent animal choose their vessel as the target, right in front of them. It's not a simple predator versus prey story. It's a wild intelligence engaging with human technology on terms we don't get to control in real time in open water, with nothing but a few dozen endangered whales writing the rules. Think about how strange that actually is when you slow down and picture it happening in real time. A 6 to 8 meter animal, or sometimes a small coordinated group of them, can snap a rudder, spin a boat sideways, and leave experienced sailors panicking in a busy shipping lane, all without laying a tooth on a single person standing right there. That's not the profile of a confused or malfunctioning predator. That's the profile of an animal making a very specific, very consistent choice over and over again across hundreds of separate encounters spanning several years. And whatever the final explanation turns out to be, that consistency is the detail that should really stick with you. So here's the real question this whole video leaves you with. If an animal this powerful is choosing not to hurt you, even while destroying the very thing keeping you safe, what does that tell us about every other predator myth you've ever believed? That question is exactly what we're unpacking in the next video, where we break down the single biggest misconception people have about which ocean predators are actually dangerous to humans, and which ones have been unfairly feared for decades. Watch that video next, because the answer is probably not the animal you're expecting, and it will completely change how you look at the ocean the next time you're near it.